Why do people think drinking raw milk, which is under order to be tested for bird flu around the country, by the way, is super healthy? No, like, I'm serious. The influencers are sold.
And it's delicious.
Raw milk is a living superfood.
Raw farm dairy.
Raw milk contains enzymes and glycoproteins.
Trace minerals, vitamins, calcium.
Well, here's a chart right here comparing raw milk and pasteurized milk.
The Make America Healthy Again movement, which just really rolls off the tongue, by the way, claims they have solutions to what ails you. What I'm seeing are symptoms of a much larger problem. Let me give a little Joker origin story here. Raw milk videos started landing on my feed maybe a year ago. People were making videos on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, about the benefits of raw milk. I've had friends reach out to me on whether that's fair game or not. So I was like, let's all jump into this as the rise of MAHA takes over us all. So just some fast facts here, and I really want us to wrap our heads around this one. Pasteurization. The only difference between raw milk and pasteurized milk is it's heated up. 161 degrees for 15 seconds. That is pasteurization. It's been around since the 1800s because, oh shit, cows were carrying tuberculosis. So they were like, we gotta fix that if people are gonna drink milk in this country. And we did. What do you know? Milk-borne illnesses went way down. Raw milk as it stands, though, isn't just susceptible to bird flu like we're seeing around the country. You can also experience salmonella, the gifts of E. coli, a little listeria goes a long way. Brucella, I don't know her, but sounds fucking terrible. The list goes on. Now, the legality of raw milk is very interesting. In 1987, it was banned across the country for interstate travel, so you can't carry it across state lines. If anybody remembers Schitt's Creek, there's a whole episode dedicated to this.
This is a lot of raw milk, Johnny.
But right now, 30 states allow the sales of raw milk in varying degrees. 20 states outright ban it. 6 states have come over to the legal side since 2020, and I'm like, I wonder what happened right around then that might have made states radicalize a natural remedy for all of their issues. We'll get there. The funny thing about the different designations for legality is in a lot of states, it's only legal if you sell it for pet usage. So on the bottles, really nice and big, it'll say not for human consumption. And I'm like, you could not catch me fucking drinking that shit with a label like that. But to each their own. Considering that only a plurality of Americans polled view raw milk as less safe than pasteurized milk. That is a big change from just the past couple decades when raw milk was widely regarded as super dangerous. And I was sitting here thinking about like, okay, what is the reason for that change? Like, this is something that we've been doing as a nation for over 100 years. What was the difference here? If you haven't noticed, there's been a massive proliferation of pseudoscience peddled by influencers since the COVID era. There are a lot of people who are in the business of taking really complex scientific facts, whittling them down to make their argument that they want to present to an audience, and then selling that as gospel. One of the statements that comes out of my mouth almost more often than anything else when I'm scrolling on my phone or computer is that true? I'm in the business of that question. I'm in the business of skepticism. That's why I'm sitting here with you today. So here are my 4 questions that I run through. Basically, anytime I hear myself asking, is this true? Let me introduce our subject for the matter. His name is Dr. Paul Saladino. He has millions of followers. He appears on podcasts all the time. Joe Rogan, Skinny Confidential. He's kind of all over the map. So I felt like he was the perfect candidate to test my 4 questions on. Let's go.
I've met hundreds of parents and hundreds of kids from those parents who have benefited from including raw dairy. I've heard of improvements in all sorts of things, from gut discomfort, diarrhea, constipation, bloating, inflammatory bowel diseases, skin conditions like eczema.
Right off the bat, I do hope it was within your understanding that he did not lay out a single one of the risks associated with drinking raw milk, which should be the first disclaimer out of his mouth. But let's start here. What are their credentials? What makes this person qualified to talk about this subject with authority? So we look at him. He is actually a doctor. That's a good thing. He's an MD. He did his residency. You look a little further and you see that MD is in psychiatry, so not exactly a lot to do with gut health, nutrition, whatever, but he's board certified in functional medicine. Is he the main source that you should be taking nutritional advice from? Probably not in that case. Question number 2, do they cite any sources? I'm gonna say, no. 100 or hundreds of mothers and children, that's not a source. That's just experience and anecdotal evidence to support whatever point he wants to make. Influencers do this a lot. There's one study that these people have attached themselves to more than fucking anything else. It's called the Parsifal study. And it's cited in basically every single raw milk argument. The issue with that study, I actually went and read it, is it talks about farm milk, not raw milk, just all milk from a farm. So they're extracting a point that they're hoping that they can make to advance their argument without it being factually accurate. For the record, the FDA's article dispelling the myths of the raw milk industry in one section alone had 25 citations. In other places, they were few and far between. My favorite that I do just have to mention here is on one of the largest raw milk organizations and advocacy groups. I went and clicked on every single source link on that website. 90% of the sources they were citing are from the 1800s. Personally, if I have a kidney infection, a liver infection, asthma, I would like a remedy from the time that America was not also engaging in slavery. I don't know. 3, are there any disclosures that they are making or not making? I'd say the blind spot on this one, after like sniffing around on his website for a while, is that he explicitly states that he cannot legally offer you medical advice. The final question, and this is the one I want you to ask as aggressively as you can with every video that you see. 4, what do they stand to benefit from promoting these ideas? In his case, he says you need supplements, you need beef organs, you need beef fallopian tubes, and thankfully for you, he sells them on his website. If somebody's financially benefiting from something, their judgment on that is automatically going to be clouded. Those are your 4 questions that you can start with. So I think we have to zoom out and look at who is making up this movement, because that was where I got a little lost in my research for this, because it's not solely MAGA people. It's not solely LA crunchy granola wellness moms. It is a convergence of these two groups that I would say until now have had no common ground and no association. I think that's one of the reasons that it's potentially one of the strongest growing movements in our culture. From where we stand today, we don't really have the vocabulary, like a catch-all name for a group that would include the governor of Colorado, who's a Democrat, and Thomas Massie, who's a Republican in the House. I'm going to label them the new pro-choice movement. And maybe you guys are going to have a lot of issues with that because I'm appropriating pro-reproductive health care language. But I'm sorry, they're taking this over and dominating this because their pro-choice actually has nothing to do with abortion. This is about pro-choice in schools. This is about pro-choice in vaccines, in baby formula, COVID precautions. We saw that so heavily. This came out of the period of 2020. At its core, it is the do-your-own research fandom. Life has handed us all a laundry list of problems in the post-COVID era. People are looking for solutions wherever they can find them, and often springing for whatever is presented as the most natural one. This group has identified the enemy and the hero to take them on. The enemy, we got 3: big food, big agriculture, big pharma. The hero in this case, make America healthy again. And this is exactly how the pipeline from internet trend to government legitimization works.
Since I was here last year, I only drank raw milk.
And this is really perfect timing for RFK Jr., who's been waiting in the wings, begging for somebody to adopt and accept him because his family rejected him. The Republicans used to reject him. The Democrats definitely reject him. But now it's perfect. HHS Secretary, here he comes. The thing that bolsters him more than anything else is that Americans, and I bring this up all the time, have an all-time low of trust in institutions. That means a perfect outsider who says, fuck these institutions, I want to burn them down. Oh, people are going to celebrate his arrival. And that they are. One of the people he might bring with them, just to close the loop on the raw milk shit, is Mark McAfee. Mark McAfee is the biggest producer of raw milk in the country. He currently has 11 lawsuits against him because of contaminations in his supply, which he's had to yank off the shelves. He's been personally invited to apply for a role at the FDA. I'm gonna round this out with 2 issues. Number 1, I actually like the things, and I'll give him credit, that RFK Jr. wants to focus on: obesity, chronic illness, processed foods. We can have that conversation. The problem is, if we're gonna have that conversation, we have to talk about the root causes. And if our kids are being fed more pizza in schools than vegetables because of Donald Trump's decision in his first term, we should probably start there. Issue number 2, if we're gonna talk about bad ingredients in products, we gotta talk about access to better ingredients for people all across America. We got food deserts, we got skyrocketing prices. Hello, this was the fucking issue of the election. Do you know how much more expensive things are gonna get if you put all of those so-called processed foods on the chopping block that he wants to wage a war on? So the affordability crisis when it comes to food, it's not gonna really go anywhere. And the economic conversation can't just be about access. It also has to be about jobs. It also has to be about tariffs, taxes, the effect that this would have on local, rural communities of people who manufacture corn and sugar and milk. With this pseudo-scientist in chief elevated to the top, this conversation becomes about so much more than just influencers drinking raw milk on Instagram. We're going to be opening a can of worms talking about how health affects our daily lives in the grocery store, at schools, at work, in the gyms, at the doctor. And we better be ready for that conversation. A lot of things weren't on my bingo card this year. Raw milk, needing a whole explainer is one of them. But make sure you're subscribed because we talk about all the weird things going on in America.